because I actually want to ask, I was fascinated by what you said about the instruments and building your instruments from clues in the diners, and wondered what you'd come up with and what instruments.
Well, basically, we knew that the bagpipes that the Latvians had were different. We knew that there was a guy in Leeds and made these quarters, but there was just something not right about them. We knew that as well. So basically, the old guy that I was telling you about, he made some bagpipes of his own based on pictures he'd seen and, you know, from the old textbooks and what he'd read about. We made our own corkles. We had 2 or 3 of those that we made, which were different than the ones that were being used. We made a thing called a duda, which is basically, how can I say, a plank of wood with a gut string and a pig's bladder. And basically, you stick the pig's bladder between the piece of wood and the string, and it's a rather rough sounding bass or cellos.
I want one of these. I want to make one, so I'm going to have to ask you afterwards about how to make something like that, because I play a bit of string instruments, and so I'm fascinated.
Well, it was a smelly and horrible job getting the pig's bladder from the abattoir.
Maybe I'll use a plastic substitute.
I wouldn't make another one now. We also, my brother took we were walking somewhere once in the woods, and he saw this tree, the stump of a tree that was, and then he looked over the other side and he could see the other parts of the tree that had been felled, and he picked up one and he saw that the tree had obviously had a problem. He says, we'll make a drum out of this. So he took it home and finished taking it all out, so he'd have the wooden shell. He got some skin, pulled that over it. So these are the sort of things that we did, and that's how we got our original sort of unique sound at the time. Then obviously we added modern instruments like violins joined in, and melodians, and I can't think what else we had, and all sorts of various other percussions and recorders and flutes and so on. And that basically what we did, and we still now use the old guy even made an old style hurdy-gurdy, which is nothing like the sort of modern equivalent that you see in France and Sweden. Being Latvian, it was a lot more primitive and simple, but you know, it was playable. And so
I really like primitive instruments because I like the way that you get different overtones, and I like I used to play African music, and you get used to kind of listening to the note inside the more atonal type of sound, or the more wooden sound, the less kind of clean sort of, this is a note and we're reverberating, but you sort of hear the note inside something that might be hitting a block of wood, and it's perhaps a more dead sound, or
I mean, the instrument with the pig bladder, we did a recording of it, and it's on our first album, but that's not available on any of the platforms. Basically, it's sold out, and we've just not got it on
anywhere. You've got a copy. Well, I'm going to want that.
I've got a copy, so I'll send you.
Not this week, another week, you know.
I'll send you a copy of that so you can hear what it sounded like. And I'll also send you 2 songs that are relevant to this time of year about Ūsiņš. One of them is from the voice is an older man, and that's the old guy who, with me and my brother, formed the group. He was the, how can we say, he was the wise old man teaching the young kids, if you like.
Is the Obi-Wan Kenobi? Is it?
Yeah, something like.
What's his name, Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi? What's his name?
Yeah, his name was Jānis Vilipsons, but he also, apart from being something with chemistry or batteries and that, he worked in Latvia, but he came to England, he didn't have English, so he ended up working in a mill. But his other interest was actually the pagan religion and all this sort of stuff. So for him, it was great to find young kids who were sort of interested and wanted to pick up the baton and run. So I'll send one of the tracks will be
pick up the pig's bladder and squash it between the
and the other track I'll sing is is a tune that is slightly different than normal. There's a Latvian song called Tumšanāk zaļa zāle, but this is a different version from a different part of Latvia. But again, it's about this time of year, and both songs talk about horses, because basically at the beginning of May, the festival, one of the big things was that the herdsmen would take the livestock out to pastures, and that would include the horses as well. So that's why he was the patron of the horses in the summer, was Ūsiņš, whereas Martin, which is in November, was the patron of them through the winter.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, having friends who sing songs in North India, sing the village songs, you really think of the similarities, because especially with the bride songs and the songs about horses, they have, there was certainly with the two villages coming together, they have all kinds of songs about where the bride is coming with the groom, and the community with the groom is coming with the groom. It's not just the groom, it's all his relations, and then with the bride it's all their relations. I remember my friend telling me a great deal, and it's so interesting about how they had songs to negotiate that coming together of societies. And you know, I feel there's definite similarities in what I hear and what I find out about in my small way from in the Indo-European connection that seems so clearly, and almost with Latvian diners, I feel like it feels so transparent and easy, because there aren't too many personalities that get in the way of the communal expression in the songs.
Yeah, I mean, when I took my son he studied at Liverpool, but you know, they have the sort of open days beforehand, so I took him across there, and as parents, we were all ushered into one other room, and the kids were ushered into another room. And there was this guy, and he sort of started asking me certain things, and I can't remember how it came about, but it was something about the name. It's something to do with my son's name more than anything else, because he says that's an unusual name, because his name's Matthijs, and I says, oh, it's a Latvian name. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And I said, why is it interesting? And he was from India, was this guy. And he says, because after I finished here, I'm actually going to Latvia, because I work with comparative linguistics. And it was to do with the Sanskrit and Latvian. So it was just one of these weird things that we met and we started talking. And it was really interesting, because he was talking about the place names in India and in Latvia. You know, it's like Bengal, the Gali, you know, is like Latgale, Zemgale, the same sort of meaning. And it's words like the god in India is called Indra, but in Latvian Indra is female. And he says there's a lot of things which are the same but twisted round in the opposite sex, or the endings are different. So like the ga on Ganges is no different than the ga on Riga, or Koldiga, or Alsunga. The GA dates back to the Indo-European proto-type language, and it's basically like a holy place or something with water. And all these places are all situated on water. So he says, you know, there's a lot of work to do and everything in that field. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. But
I think it is interesting, and I think it's, I mean, I think it gives people a window into the origins of lots of other European languages, or to an earlier time in other European languages. So we all have a connection to it, even if people think, oh, I don't know anything about Latvia, what on earth is that? Because it's kind of new on a lot of people's radar, I think, because of the way that history has panned out for the most recent generations. I mean, I've got a bit of my family came from Old Prussia, which is what, or that's where my dad chose to describe it. But of course, we were all cut off because of the Iron Curtain and things being different. We didn't have that connection with that side of our history. And I ended up falling on Latvia just through a couple of other things that happened in my life as the place that I've got a connection with. But the like my aunt always wanted to go, and my granddad, because they ended up in Scotland and they didn't have that connection. It's sort of in their family, but everybody just thought, oh, they were German, and then it was Old Prussian, and what's Old Prussian? Is it the same as Prussia in Germany? Everybody thinks about Bismarck. No, it's something different. And even now, like, nobody knows what I mean if I say Old Prussian, so it's a little easier to say.
Well, originally they were a Baltic tribe, so yeah, but their language, I can't remember, was it the 17th or 18th century their language became extinct? That's why. And there was also another tribe which is in Russia, and their language disappeared, and basically it was down to two, which was Lithuanian and Latvian.
Yeah, but they've got such connections between them. They're all in the same group. So it's been interesting for me to connect that side of what I was told when I was younger was a lost history of our family. So that's been a little personal drive on it. But I think we can all connect to it from, or lots of people who are from other European languages, because it's Indo-European. It seems to be a window onto sort of roots of time, and that's fascinating. It's like a time machine.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, how can I say? The only danger with it sometimes is that although it seems very clear sometimes, it's not that clear. It's muddied by time and events. And I mean, it's like if, for instance, everything changed, you know, both in the world and everything. Let's say Kaliningrad became Königsberg again. Because of the influence that's been now of Russians there for so long, there'd be probably nothing left of the old Prussia that was there before that. So, you know, things change, and it changes the perspective of things. And I suppose it's no different for the Baltic states with the influx of the amount of Russians, that it's had an impact both socially and historically on the countries, which you can't deny. It's there, it's happened, and it's just how you change and evolve over time back to what you're really searching for.
Yeah, I think you can't turn the clock back, but at the same time, it's so interesting. The culture and song is one of the big ways of, you know, it's this part of culture. And I wouldn't want it just to be associated with, you know, like right-wing nationalism. And a lot of people point the finger at folklorists now and say, oh, you must be being right-wing because you're interested in folk music. But that isn't at all true, because in the UK, for instance, we've got a huge tradition of left-wingers being interested in folk music and right.
One of the most famous ones I can cite is a guy who went to the same school as me, a bit before my time. But Ewan McCall went to Salford, from Salford.
Yes,
he went to North Grecian Street, the same as me, and he definitely wasn't.
No, that's right.
Yeah,
like Ewan and Peggy and Peggy Seeger, but particularly Ewan McCall, like you say, is a great example. But also, I think you know, people have used folk music in the UK and in America and in lots of other ways to be a way into resistance and all kinds of different types of opinion. It isn't. It doesn't.
Well, that was very much the case with Latvian. Yeah, the national awakening in the 19th century was driven through the folklore and the collecting of folk songs and the language, and the second awakening, and even when you go back to the 1980s, really it was like the folk songs were driving it. And although the bigger festivals, the song festivals, got hijacked by the regime a little, there was still that element of folk singers carrying on the simple tradition, if you like, which also in the end became one of the driving forces in the three countries gaining their independence again.
Yeah, the singing revolution is famous for being the singing revolution. But also, you know, I live in Hastings here, and we've just had Jack in the Green festival, and that's a sort of neo-pagan kind of neo-revival tradition that people just love, and people from all kinds of walks of life. In fact, it's particularly more, I'd say, a Labour left-wing type of core to the people who are celebrating Morris dancing and folk music and dressing up, and they're getting a bit back of what whatever they've put together, whether it's new or old, but they want to have this communal type of celebration of the season and to feel the connection with ancient traditions, even if they're remaking it in a way that it may never have been really like what they're doing. I mean, it's partly music festival, partly just dressing up, but it's that urge is not necessarily to do with, I don't know, going back in terms of conservative values. I think it's just there for people to grab onto when we want it. I think people are very hungry for it from all kinds of areas.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when these things are done and they're done right, they do give that sense of belonging and that sense of fulfillment that sometimes in our modern world is lacking somehow. And although they seem very simple, that deep down there's actually a lot more meaning to them than some of the superficial stuff that our modern world is full of.
Yeah, at least you don't have to buy loads of things. It's just about, and especially if you go to old folk music, I mean, all you need is a pig's bladder and
yeah,
dead cat. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting.
It is. Tell me the name of your band again, or the group, singing group.
It's called Dudalnieki.
Dudalnieki.
Nieki, yeah. It basically, it's the person who plays that instrument that I was telling you about.
Instrument is the duda.
And it just came about because we got invited to play somewhere and we didn't have a name, and my brother sort of says to Yanis, look, what's the person called who plays this? Because he says they'll have never seen one of these, and he said, well, that's a duda, so a person who plays it'll be a Dudalnieks. All right, he says, but with more of us, so they'll be in plural, it'll be Dudalnieki. He says, yeah, right, we'll call ourselves that. And that's how it came about, basically.
Lovely. If I'm a woman, which I am, would I be a Dudalnieka?
Yeah, you'd be a Dudalniete. It changes slightly. Yeah. But the group, because basically it was us three lads who started it, the name is stuck as it is. But when we talk generally between ourselves, because there's the majority now are all women in the group, we basically just we don't even talk about the name, to be honest with you. We just do it. We actually just call ourselves dudes.
That's quite good. Funny.
Yeah.
And names of bands are weird anyway, aren't they? I mean, I think U2 probably is the most ridiculous name that ever was, really, but nobody just, once it's there, it's like unquestioned.
Yeah, that's right.
Is the name, but I'm glad to know what it means.
I mean, I put up on our Facebook page a piece yesterday, which is an instrumental piece, and that again is, I only put it up because it basically applies to this time of year. Piaguli is when they go out, the herdsmen go out. It's just an instrumental piece that I play on bagpipes. I'm just trying to think what else is there. I'll send you a few pieces that'll be relevant to it anyway, and then you can pick and choose. Do you need them in MP3 again? I
really love them in MP3. If you can do that, it makes my life very.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. I can do that easy enough.
Brilliant.
I can do that. Yeah. So I'll get them done.
Oh, thanks.
One thing we didn't forget to mention about the songs is I did say that he collected thousands and thousands of them, but there's now rough that, well, they don't know exactly, but it's some over 1 million. It's about 1.2 to possibly 1.4 million of them. I'm one of the very fortunate people. I've got, when it was Baron's 100th birthday, or since his death or something, I can't remember what they reproduced the original books. So I've got them. I've also got the same sort of thing, but it was when Latvians came into exile in the West, they produced the volumes again. So I got them actually from my wife's uncle or father, I'm not sure now. I've also got ones that were produced in Latvia's first time of independence, and I've actually got one which was done it's been done now. It started off in the Soviet era, which is quite funny because the books are in red, and then when Latvia's gained its independence, they're all in green. But I'll send you a picture so you get an idea of how many of these books are, you know, for the folk songs.
Oh, I'd love that, because I'm, you know, just my own interest. I'm fascinated.
And unfortunately, I don't have this in English, but it's a brilliant book this woman's done. I mean, it's called Dina Codex, the Dina Codex, and basically she looks at more or less every sort of word that's in them and what the meaning was and how to understand it and how the different ways you can look at it. And that's a shame, because you'd have loved that in English.
I'd have loved that. My Latvian isn't good enough, and I fear it may never be. But
that one's in English. I don't know if you can see it.
I've got that one. I think you recommended it to me before, and I've got that one.
All right,
I really
I think it's really good, because it's not exactly riveting and exciting reading, but if you're into that sort of subject, it nonetheless it is interesting. So yeah,
I like it because I remember reading the Indian books, the Rig Veda and all that when I was younger, because of being a bit of a hippie and wanting to explore all the Bhagavad Gita and what is it all about, and it was very confusing even then, because it is quite a confusing type of mythology, especially when you're from a Christian background, where God is a sort of principle in a way, and suddenly it's got these people killing each other on the battlefield. It's like, what is going on? What's this got to do with what I had thought of as religion? But yeah, so I was, but still fascinating. And thinking about the comparative stuff is very powerful, sort of imaginative practice anyway, looking at connections and what makes people similar, and different roots of things. It's just something quite compelling. It's like looking at plants. I mean, that's more science, I suppose, but when you look at plants and you see the relationship between plants that have and how they relate to each other.
And I mean, it's amazing how things can stick within a culture when it's been changed for whatever reason. I can't remember the name of the historian who did a series about Alexander the Great, and they were showing how even now today near Afghanistan, or it might have been in Afghanistan or on the border with Iran there somewhere, there's a tribe of women who have costumes, and they look absolutely a spitting image of Greek costumes. And the dances they do are still so ancient, but he then flashed back to Greece and showed a Greek group doing, and then these women doing it. And he says, when you think about the time that's elapsed since Alexander the Great went there, how has it survived in these mountains? Doesn't make sense, but it does. So there's something deep rooted sometimes in the psyche of people when they start something and then they just continue it and continue it.
And I think sometimes this is slightly different, but always just stuck in my mind. You get something that happens at a particular time, and then technologies change and something is made in a new way, but they'll still keep the attributes of when things were made in a previous way. And that my one big example I remember being shown by a wonderful teacher we had at school was the pillars in Egypt. He was interested in archaeology and of buildings particularly, and he showed how actually the construction of the pillars mimicked, when they started using stone, how reed was tied together, because they like the pillars went in at the point where there would have been the reeds would have been tied together with a big rope. So, you know, that made me think, oh, wow, I see. And then I started to look around the house, and you realize, oh, look, skirting board. It's like we think it's so obvious, but it's like a remnant of old paneling, like wooden paneling that's shrunk down and stuff like that. So, you know, it just helps with understanding what you see. And personally, I love to see things and where they've come from, and that, you know, that's what gives me a lot of my pleasure in life. I go, some of it anyway.
Have you ever been to Orkneys yourself?
I haven't. I'd love to go, actually.
It is interesting. I mean, Skara Brae just blew my mind. It really did, and as well as the ring of Brogder and the stones that stay in there.
Wasn't it supposed to be really warm at one point up there? Wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was just
really
very, very windy.
No, I mean in the past, wasn't it supposed to?
Yeah, in the past, yeah, in the past, it was very, very, very fine. It was really not good, warm, and they had the whole landscape was different, and the food that they could have was so different to what they've got now. But yeah, it is just interesting to see how people, that it actually predates Stonehenge by 500 to 600 years. You know, it's mind-boggling if you think that is like as far back as Shakespeare to now.
Yeah, no, a huge length of time. And I tell you what, I'd love, I mean, it's,
sorry about this, just got a bit of cramp.
oh, I bet, yeah, we've been sitting a while to give it love. But I just want to ask you something because I'm desperate. I want to, Latvian archaeologist, I'd really like to have a look at some stuff that must be about somewhere, about you know, burials in Latvia and everything. I'm quite interested in getting a bit more of an insight into that and the old hill forts. I mean, there must be archaeology going on that I'm haven't come across yet.
There is. To be honest, I don't know an archaeologist as such. And I dare say there is somebody who can get in touch with, but
it'd be lovely to talk to someone about archaeology, Latvian archaeology for the show at some point. Let's see. If you run into anyone, I'll be really.
Yeah, I'll bear that in mind. I dare say when I'm there this summer, I might be able to ask around because we're playing at a festival there this summer. So
lovely.
Not that long now, 2 months, and we'll be there. So wow. I'll ask that question. I'll try and find out for you, Jude. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we better wrap up.
Well, I hope you can use some of that.
Yeah, we'll use it. I mean, it will be quite relaxed because I always do very relaxed editing, but it's going to be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll send you the few songs and I'll send you a few pictures as well. And I'm sure you'll be able to make use of whatever. Yeah. Okay, then. Good.
Cheers. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. See ya. Bye.